there's another thing I got to get out of the way before we get started, and that is that I believe in God. We got two claps. Geez. This is... This is going to be a tough audience, I guess. So, now, I didn't always believe in God. In fact, for a long time, I would say I didn't really believe in anything. I wasn't atheist or agnostic. I wasn't a Jew, Christian, Muslim, anything like that. I was just kind of floating around in some sort of existential soup, if you will. And I'd say in my mid-20s, something like that, I started to kind of undergo this sort of spiritual crisis, existential crisis or something, and I wanted to find answers. I actually went and I was like, okay, well, what are we doing here? Is there meaning to life? Is there a purpose to life? Where did we come from? Where are we going? Is there a God? Is there a great creator being? I started asking those questions. The important point that I came to in understanding this creative force that governs all the principles of this world is that any name or image you ultimately give to this creator being is going to fall short of the thing in and of itself. It's ultimately going to fail. And this is one of the reasons that Islam are so staunch about not having any image of Allah. Now, of course, some people have taken this to extremes. I know, I think in Judaism, it's the same thing, that it's forbidden to speak the name of God. That's the same idea, because you could give God a name, but ultimately, that's not God. God is the thing that's in and of itself. Oscar Wilde once said, "To define is to limit." So as soon as we try to stick a name to it, stick an image to it, we're limiting it. And that just shows how much we don't really understand about this creative force. This creative force is everything. It's omnipotent, omniscient, omnipresent. It's the totality, it's the all, it's the entirety of, it's the universe, it's everything that we can conceive, everything we can't conceive, it's nothing and something at the same time, it's everything. And so we realize that God is almost beyond comprehension in one way, though we can comprehend the fact that we can't comprehend it. Does everybody get that? So that puts man in a really unique, interesting place. So what we're going to do is take a look at this universality of this great creative force. Now, monotheism is just widely misconstrued, because most people, when they hear monotheism, they're like, well, I'm a Jewish person, and my God is the right God. So there's one God, it's my God. You don't believe in my God, you're going to hell. You better follow my text, you better follow my beliefs, you better follow my rituals, otherwise, good luck. Well, the problem that we have here is, like I said, this is an idea. Monotheism is misunderstood. Theism, as we just looked at, was the study of God. And mono means one. So monotheism is the recognition that there is one God. There's one force that created everything. There is one a fundamental being that interpenetrates and makes everything, has created us. And all of these different religions, all across this great blessed earth, were all in their own unique ways, in their own artistic and creative ways, expressing this wholeness and this oneness. And what we're going to do is find out that that oneness is something that's undeniable, it's irrefutable, and it can be proven mathematically. So, can the paradox of the Holy Trinity, three becoming one, it's found in Hinduism, Egyptian, Greek, Christian, and Norse mythologies, can this paradox be nullified? This idea of three separate beings becoming one. How does that work? Well, philosophically and mathematically, the answer is absolutely yes, it can be nullified. How many people are in this room? Let's say there's 100, 150. Let's say there's 150 people in this room. Well, there's 150 each individual ones. You're one, and you're one, and you're one, and I'm one, and you're one. But the fact that I just grouped us all into a unit, 150, which means what? I just created a oneness, a wholeness. So that 150, that 150 people is a unit. Well, where does unit come from? It comes from unity. So it doesn't matter how big or complex the number gets. You want to talk about 2, 82, 147, 932, 1,086. It doesn't matter what number you look at. Ultimately, by the fact that you brought it together into one unit, speaks of the fundamental unity of our creation. Now, some of you are probably like, look, Marty, It's 9:30 in the morning. I'm not that good at math. I don't really know comparative mythology that well and stuff like that, but you're not going to find God in a cube. Well, these people might think differently. Does everybody know what this is? Mecca. Arguably one of the most holy places on earth, though I think a place being more holy than another is kind of ridiculous in my opinion, but this could be arguably one of the most holy places on earth. This is in Saudi Arabia, and people of the Muslim faith, they do a pilgrimage. It's called the Hajj Pilgrimage. And like 2 or 2.5 million people go here every single year, as part of their religious faith, as part of their religious journey. And what they do is they circumambulate around this central cube. They circle around it. And this is part of, once again, their spiritual tradition. And they circle around this thing not once, not twice, not 3 times, not 4 times, not 5 times, not 6 times, but 7 times. And this number 7 is going to be quintessential to our study. So we see, and really what this is called the Kaaba, which we're going to get into a second. One of the things about this is that this is supposedly the place where Muhammad received the revelations directly from Allah to write the Quran. And so what the Muslim people did is, well, they're just going to mark it, and they're going to mark it with a geometric object, and that geometric object is, well, it's a cube. So what we're going to do is look at the cube today and how it's prevalent in all of these religions, and then we're going to take this cube and we're going to use it to decode the mathematical structure of the English alphabet. It's the language that we're all using today. There's the English alphabet here, and then of course we have the numbers down there. And this science, it's actually an artistic or a creative science, is called gematria. And that is the science of putting numbers to letters to reveal deeper meanings behind words and phrases and ideas and names and things like that. And this science, this scientific art, has been around for as long as we know history, as long as recorded history. There's many different languages that have a mathematical structure to them. So for instance, Arabic, we know, has a mathematical structure. You can just go on Google and find it. Greek, go on Google, find it. There's a mathematical structure. They put numbers to the letters of the particular characters or symbols of their language. Hebrew, same thing. We can most assure, I really have no doubt, though I don't know if we necessarily have the ciphers for these languages, but Sanskrit and Latin most definitely have ciphers for their languages as well. So we can see all of these major languages all over the world actually had a mathematical structure behind the language. And so what we're going to do today is I'm going to try to make the case to you in a very scientific way that we're going to see how this art, this scientific art, manifests itself in the English language. Now, as I said earlier, Mecca, that cube in the center is called a Kaaba. It's called a Kaaba. So Kabbalah is Kaaba, cube, Allah. The cube of Allah. So, wait a second. We're looking, Kabbalah is a study within Jewish mysticism. And the term is actually telling you about an Islamic cube and God. So we can see we have the cube of Allah, and then all of a sudden we go into Jewish mysticism and we have Kabbalah. But Judaism and Islam really shouldn't have anything to do with each other. Those, right? Those got nothing to do with each other. Well, when we look through these 3 main monotheistic faiths, what we're going to also see is that this has a direct relationship to one of those other faiths, and that being what? Christianity. So, what are we doing here? We got a cube. It's 3-dimensional, and what we're going to do is we're just going to lay this out in 2 dimensions. So you can just imagine we're going to take this face and this bottom and fold it down, and this one fold it over, and this one fold it over, and this one fold it up, and what do you got? So let's just pump the brakes here. Let's take a step back, take another step back. So the cube of Allah, the Kabbalah, which is Jewish mysticism, finds itself in Islam, and then all of a sudden we look in Islam at the Kaaba, and then we unfold it in 2 dimensions, and we find Christianity. Seems like these faiths have a lot more in common than most of the people that are following these faiths really know. What else does this represent? Well, it represents you. It represents the 3-dimensional mathematics of you. It represents how you navigate through time and space. That's what it is. So we have forward, reverse, up, down, left, and right. 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And those 6 come together to be one geometric form, one object, one archetype. Forward, reverse, up, down, left, right, 6 directions of space, merging onto a central point. So that central point becomes the cube in and of itself. So we have this concept of 6 around 1, and 6 plus 1 is, there's that 7 again. Now, what is this 6 around 1 becoming 7? Well, in mathematics, that 7th point, where they all merge together on, that 7th point is called the axis point. Well, what's axis? It's an anagram for a 6. 6 directions of space, and then what's the A? Well, the A in most alphabets is what? It's the first letter. It's the first thing in creation. It's the alpha. So what do we have here? We have the first point of creation, the alpha, and what happened? It spread out. It went 360 degrees, created the sphere of creation, or the cube of creation, if you will. That alpha point, and then it went forward, reverse, left, right, up, and down. And that's the 6 directions of space. Where else do we see this concept of 6 around 1? Oh, wait, hold on. Maybe this here? Maybe know Genesis? God did his work in 6 days and rested on the 7th? Well, what are they talking about? So what do you think Genesis, when we look at it symbolically, when we look at it as a parable, as an allegory, what is it talking about? It's talking about the construction of the human temple, the 6 directions of space resting on a central point. Now, that central point, that axis point, is within you. We don't see it. So we can see forward, we can see reverse, we can go up, down, left, right, all that. But we can't see the axis point. Now, in many faiths, the axis point was actually, it was found in your heart. So we don't see it. We can feel it. We can feel emotion. We can feel love and that sort of thing, but we don't see it. Excuse me, sorry. Just love my heart. We also don't see it on the Rubik's Cube, do we? What are you talking about? What is this guy talking about? Look at the Rubik's Cube. We have 3 levels, 1, 2, 3, and each of those levels has 9 cubes. Does everybody see that? Well, what's 3 times 9? It's 27. So there's 27 cubes here. Interestingly enough, though, you don't see the middle cube. The middle cube is invisible. What's also interesting is the whole thing revolves around the middle cube. The invisible point in the center is what the entire Rubik's Cube revolves around. So the 6 directions of space resting on a 7th point, becoming 7, represented in the cube perfectly. So that center cube that we don't see, that's representative of your heart. That's the centering point of you. So as I was saying earlier, we see this in all of these different traditions all over the world. And so what we're going to do is just kind of list them off here. The first one there is the Star of David. And it's called the Seal of Solomon as well. And you can see there's 1, 2, 3 points going up, 1, 2, 3 points going down, 3 up, 3 down, end of an inning. And you have those 3 and 3 becoming one object, one archetype, one symbol. And then, of course, in the center, well, it's invisible. So the center point is invisible in the Star of David and the Seal of Solomon. Down here is called it's a symbol for the Theosophical Society. Theosophical Society was really big, I think in like 1800, something like that. Guys like R.A. Schwalder de Lubitsch, Helena Blavatsky, Rudolf Steiner, these were all people that were part of the Theosophical Society. Sophia is wisdom, that's where Asophy comes from, and Thea is God. So basically Theosophy means the wisdom of God. And their slogan there is, there's no religion higher than truth. Amen. And then Freemasonry here. We have the Freemasonic square and compasses. Compass is pointing up to heaven. 1, 2, 3 points of the compass. Square is pointing down to earth. 1, 2, 3. 3 up, 3 down, end of an inning becoming one form. Seed of life. I'm sure many people know the sacred geometric seed of life. Same thing, exact same idea, all talking about the 3-dimensional mathematics of you, all talking about the divinity of you, all talking about how you navigate through space and time. 6 petals focusing on a central point in your heart. This is a Lakota symbol. Same thing. Basically, the Star of David and Seal of Solomon, except it's not interlaced. Still connected, but you have 3 up, 3 down, becoming one object, pointing to that center point. Where else do we see this? The modern-day symbol of medicine. The modern-day symbol of medicine is talking about the 3-dimensional mathematics of you. As you see, 6 points becoming one object. Of course, we have the staff and the serpent there. That's an entire lecture in and of itself. That's a series of lectures in and of itself that we could talk about. So many people know that from raising the kundalini, the energy within the vessel of the human being that rises up through the spine. Like I said, that's a whole other lecture. We're not even going to touch on that here. This symbol here is called the Chi Rho. Chi Rho is a Greek symbol, and it's a Greek symbol for Jesus Christ. And it was 2 letters, X and P, coming together. And that X and P come together, as you can see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and resting on a 7. Menorah, same thing. 3 over here, and they come together in 1 point. Guess what? All those candles rest on what? The central pillar. What's that central pillar represent? Your heart. Ordo Templi Orientis, this is another esoteric order, but as you can see, basically the same symbol. Just created a little bit different. You know, the 6 points, 3 up, 3 down. And then, as we know, the chakras. The chakra system is the exact same thing. Same thing that's shown in the menorah, really. You have your 3 chakras here, and your 3 up here, and then you have 1 in the center, and that center is the heart. 3 up, 3 down, pointing to the heart. And those are the Muladhara, the Svanasana, the Manipura, the Anahata, heart, the Vishuddha, the Ajna, Anya, and then the Sahasrara. And those are the chakras. Once again, same thing. 6 around 1. 6 around 1 becoming what? 7. What is this 6 around 1? What is it ultimately talking about? Yes, it's talking about the 3-dimensional mathematics of you. Yes, it's talking about how you navigate through space and time. Yes, yeah, we get it. But ultimately, it's talking about a philosophical credo and axiom that's shared worldwide. And that is the concepts, and that's one of the things, the main focuses of this whole Modern Knowledge Tour, is the concepts of as above, so below. Universes within and without. Macrocosm and microcosm. The small and the little becoming one. And that's exactly what the Seal of Solomon or the Star of David is talking about. Same thing as the Freemasonic square and compass is. Heaven, pointing up to heaven, earth, becoming one. So, where do we get these symbols that tell us about as above, so below? Where do they come from? The Zionists, they created them. The Jewish people created them. No, the Lakota created them. That's who it was. No, I think it was the alchemist, if I get it right. No, I think it was the Hermeticists. Or no, it was the Aboriginals in Australia. No, sorry, wrong, done. You know who created these symbols? Nature created these symbols. Nature is the great book of life that which we learn from, which all of these texts, all of these philosophies and ideologies and theologies, all were based on the representation or recognition of a sacredness within nature. So where do symbols come from? They come from nature. Symbols come from geometry. Geometry and mathematics. Mathematics and geometry is the language of nature. That's the language that science uses to understand this world. It's the tool, it's the medium in which it uses. Now, man did not create mathematics. Man did not imagine mathematics. Man did not concoct mathematics. Man is only understanding mathematics from nature itself. It's learning math from nature itself. That's the language of the creator. Now, don't listen to dummy Marty Leeds. What the hell does he know? Listen to Galileo. Galileo said mathematics is the language which God created the universe in. Listen to Pythagoras when he said all is number. Listen to Kepler when he said geometry existed before the creation. It is co-eternal with the mind of God. So math, geometry, is how we come to understand the symbolic nature of this creative force that governs our world. Now, when we looked at the cube, we saw that there was 27 cubes, but one was invisible, right? And that was the centering point that everything revolved around. And that was representative or symbolic of your heart. So, can anybody tell me what 27 minus 1 is? 26. That's interesting. Well, we have 26 letters of the English alphabet. So what we're going to do is use this 6 around 1 motif, God doing his work in 6 days and resting on the 7th, and we're going to use this to decode the mathematics of the English alphabet. But first, what we're going to do is split the alphabet in half. Now, can anybody tell me why we're deciding to split the alphabet in half? We just went over it, right? As above and so below. Triangle pointing up, triangle pointing down. Compass, square. 3 up, 3 down, end of an inning. Look at your human body. Look at yourself. And just go split yourself right down the middle. You're symmetrical. You're mirrored. It's almost like God was like really lazy and just decided to make half of you, and there's like, oh, just mirror this shit. You know, it's like, you know. So you have left eye, right eye. Hemispheres of your brain, left and right. Left ear, right ear. Shoulders, breasts, hands. Right? Your whole body is symmetrical. Well, if that's what nature's telling us to do, maybe we should just follow what nature says. And so what we're going to do is use that symmetry, that mirroring principle, and we're going to split the alphabet in half. And so what we have here is, just like on the cube, God doing his work in 6 days and resting on a seventh, up, down, left, right, forward, reverse, coming together to be one geometric object, resting on that axis point. We're just going to take that and we're going to just lay it onto the English alphabet. So, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Everybody see that? And we're going to stop. And since this half of the alphabet is just a mirror, a symmetry, that's what we're using here, we're just going to do the same here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're going to rest there. We're just going to stop there. Now, in that the first half of our alphabet, that 13 letters there, you can see we rested on the G. And in the Freemasonic square and compasses, there's a big old fat G there. And then, of course, what was the compasses and square? Heaven, earth, as above, so below. 3 up, 3 down, resting on a center point. And what's in the center point of that? It's a G. So what the Freemasons were doing, and I don't know how many people here, what they feel about the Freemasonic Brotherhood and that sort of thing, doesn't really matter. What the Freemasons were doing was being custodians of this ancient creative, scientific art. That's what they were doing. They were custodians of it. I live in the United States. If you go into any town, almost any town, any incorporated town in the United States, you're going to roll in, and a sign on the town is, or there's, you know, on the sign of the town is going to say "Free and Accepted Masons," and there's going to be that symbol right there. So I don't really think they were being too secret about it. In fact, they were trying to tell you. So we rest on that G there, so that makes sense. Here we go NOPQRST, going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, resting. And we have the letter T there. And this is actually known as the Tao Cross. It also has a mathematical parallel too. It's called Tau. It's just called Tau, and it's actually 2 pi. It's 6.28. We're not going to get into that. It doesn't really matter for our study here. But just so you know, the T is a very, very important symbol. And in one respect, the T is the cross that we unfolded with our cube. Where else do we find the T? So we're resting. And what? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Forward, reverse, up, down, left, right, and resting right here. So it makes sense that we're resting on the T. So we have that first half of our alphabet here. Now we're not going to walk up to 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. We're not going to do that. And why aren't we going to do that? Because we're dealing with symmetry here. We're dealing with a mirroring principle. And so what we're going to do is we're just going to walk back down. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And so 7 is this extremely important number. Remember, the people of the Islamic faith, they took their pilgrimage to a cube and walked around it 7 times. 7 days a week, 7 colors of the rainbow, 7 chakras, there's 7 stars in the Pleiades, 7 in the Big Dipper, 7 days of creation in Genesis, 7 tablets of the Enuma Elish, 7 hermetic principles. We could go, it's ad nauseum how many times we see 7. So what we're going to do, since this whole cipher is based on 7, since the three-dimensional mathematics of U is based on 7, what we're going to do is just focus on the number 7, and we're going to use our cipher as it is written down here, and we're going to put the numbers to the letters of 7. So S-E-V-E-N is 65551, and this equals 22. Does everybody see what we're doing here? 22 divided by 7 is 3.142, and this is pi. And this is where pi enters our investigation. Now, what is pi? That's a fundamental question. So we see that this number in mathematics is actually encoded within the word 7. So what is pi? Pi is the ratio of a circle's circumference to its diameter. So, very simple geometry. All you have is a circle and a line there. And all you're going to do is make that diameter, or that line, 1. And you go to measure that circle, that circumference, and it's going to be this number, 3.141592653589793238462, blah, 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 blah. Pi is an infinite, transcendental, and irrational number. We're going to go over those terms. Pi is an infinite, transcendental, and irrational number. There's been 10 or 12 or 13 trillion digits of pi that have been calculated this far, and we don't see the end of this thing. We don't see its tail. So this thing just keeps going on and on and on. It's like me on the stage here. Just shut up. So pi is infinite. Now, what does infinite, transcendental, and irrational mean? Well, what is God? God is infinite, right? Makes sense. God is transcendental, right? That makes sense. God is irrational. Oh, shit. Oh, God's irrational? Doesn't bode well for us, does it? Well, irrationality, when we talk about the irrationality of pi, basically what we're saying is that there is no two numbers, two integers or two whole numbers, natural numbers, that can be divided to find this endless string of digits. That's what irrational means. So when we say pi is irrational, what we're really saying is that it's indivisible. It's indivisible. It's holy. It's wholeness. Well, duh, that's what pi's doing. The holiness of a circle. That's why when you dig a hole, it's a hole. So pi we find locked away, occulted within the number 7. Why is this so important? Why is this so important that we're focusing on pi here? Why pi? This comes from, highly recommend this book, by the way. It's called Frank C. Higgins' Hermetic Masonry. If you want to dip your feet into esoterica, this is the text for you. It says here, many Hebrews and Greeks employ the letters of their respective alphabets as numbers to this very day. It is completely in accord with the ancient philosophy, which in apostrophizing the deity as the pi proportion, endowed with omnipotent self-exertion in the ordering of inchoate matter. Inchoate means rudimentary or elementary. In other words, pi is a logos active in cosmos. Logos, the term logos, is a Greek term. Now, when the King James Holy Bible was translated, logos means word, and so logos means word. So when we hear of John 1:1, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. Well, what he's saying there is that this pi proportion, that is the logos, is the Word of God. Now, we already know, science knows, and we know that mathematics is the language of God. So if God is speaking a word, is he speaking a word in Italian or Russian, or is he speaking English? No. God's speaking the language of mathematics. So if God's speaking a word, what is he speaking? Well, according to Frank C. Higgins there, he's speaking the word of pi. The pi proportion is never absent. Very important. In one form or another from every one of the world's primitive religions, and certainly enters deeply and radically into the philosophies that have given rise to what we in these days call Masonry. So we see pi as representing this Word of God. And that makes sense because, as we just saw, pi is infinite. God is infinite. Pi is transcendental. God is transcendental. Pi is irrational. It's indivisible. God is indivisible. And as we started this thing, what are we talking about here? Oneness, wholeness, totality, universality. And pi is a representation of that. So, 7 encodes pi. 7 encodes pi. We saw all those symbols are talking ultimately about 7. Those symbols are ultimately talking about the 6 directions of space, resting on an axis point. That axis point is the centering point, the enlivening, enlightening, conscious point within you. And that equals 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So what we're going to do is just do some simple arithmetic. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 plus 5 plus 6 plus 7 equals 28. And what we're going to do is take a look at this number and how important this number is. So locked away in the word 7 is pi. Locked away in the numbers of 7 is a number 28. Where do we find 28? Everybody look at your hands. What you have in your hands are things called phalanges. And these are these little sections or segments of your hands. And you have 2 on your thumb and 3 on each finger. So just count with me here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. So you have 14 segments or sections on your hand. So what's 14 times 2? So 28 phalanges. So once again, I'm just going to go over this again. We added 1 through 7, it equals 28. We look down at our hands and we find 28. Well, not only did that number 7 represent the three-dimensional mathematics of you, it's manifesting itself on your hands as well. 2 thumbs. I just like looking at my mug, that's all. And 8 fingers. Or 28. 28. Let's look at one hand. You got 1 thumb and 4 fingers. Or 14. Wow. Nature is saying numerology works. And I'm going to show it to you right on your hands. So, interesting thing about your hands, since we're looking at the mathematics of our hands, where we get the word digit comes from the Latin word digitus. And digitus means finger. So where we get the word digit comes from these babies right here. Genesis 1:1. Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, let's just count these words. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Well, that's 10. That's 10 words. In Hebrew, it's 28 letters. It's always been with us. Never left us. Now, Genesis 1:1 is, in the beginning, God created the what? The heaven and the earth. In sacred geometry, heaven is known as a circle, as the number 3. And earth is known as a square, as the number 4. Heaven is a circle, as the number 3. Earth is a square, as the number 4. Anybody tell me what 3 plus 4 is? 7. So once again, the merging of heaven and earth is talking about 7. 7 heaven. That's why it rhymes. This compasses and square, that's once again, we already discovered that this stuff comes from nature. If you think that square and compasses is a Freemason logo, you're incorrect. It's not a Freemason logo. Sure, the Freemasons adopted it. Sure, we understand it, that's how we recognize it. Oh, that's a Freemason logo. It's actually not, though, because this compasses and square representing heaven and earth has been shared worldwide. And here's just a few examples here. This comes from China on the left here. As you can see, some pretty interesting elements, very highly symbolic, deep, rich with symbolism there. But as you can see, there's a couple serpents coiling around one another, and they're going up to a mother and father creator god. And these creator gods, I think it's called Nu Wa and Fu Chi. I believe I might be saying that incorrectly. But mother and father, creator gods that created everything. And what's in their hands? Compass and a square. This is an alchemical illustration. I think it's from Henrik Nolius, I believe is his name. 1600s, somewhere around there. And as you can see, there's a 3 and 4 there. And what's 3 plus 4? 7. And we know 7 encodes pi, right? Word 7 encodes pi, right? So we see the 3 and 4. We see this mother and father character. And what's he, she, the androgynous being holding? Compass and square. Again. So we see it in Chinese, see it in alchemy, see it in Freemasonry. And of course, Jesus himself was a Jewish carpenter. And what did the carpenters of old use to construct, to make blueprints? Google SketchUp. That's what he did. That's Google SketchUp. Jesus would rock Google SketchUp, by the way. But as we see, Jesus was a carpenter. Compass, square, same thing. Same thing. Jesus recognized that he is the central node, the balancing point between everything that's above, everything that's below. And that's why we see the compasses in square. So what we're going to do is just look at our digits now. And we're just going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. In my opinion, the Creator when it gave us mathematics to understand it, it didn't want to convolute it. It wanted to make it simple. It wanted to make it easy. So what we're going to do is look at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, because that's what we got. And what we're going to do is, all we're going to do is put the numbers to the letters of these 10 words given to us in the English alphabet. So 1 equals 8, 2 is 13, 3 is 28, 4 is 19, 5 is 21, 6 is 14, 7 is 22, 8 is 30, 9 is 12, and 10 is 13. And what we're going to do is just add these up. Eight plus 13 plus 28 plus 19 plus 21 plus 14 plus 22 plus 30 plus 12 plus 13 equals 180. Now, if I say 180, there's probably a lot of people in this room that have a relationship to the number 180. You probably know what 180 means, right? Well, 180 is the internal degrees of any triangle. Well, what is that triangle? It's 3 points becoming 1. What are those 3? Well, Claudia was telling us about that paradox of the 3 becoming 1. Remember? Shiva, Brahman, and Vishnu in Hinduism, 3 gods becoming 1. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, 3 gods becoming 1. Isis, Osiris, Horus, 3 gods becoming 1. Odin, Freya, and Thor, 3 gods becoming 1. If this number came out to 181, I would have nothing to tell you. If this number came out to 237, actually I could probably tell you about 237. If this came out to 232, I couldn't tell you anything. This came out to 174, I would have nothing to say. But this comes out to a very particular number. Now, if God is using mathematics as its language, well then, and we actually go out in our world and we see 180 every time we see a triangle, well, that means 180 is probably pretty important. That means that great creative force that governs everything in this creation is trying to tell us, hey, 180, here it is, here it is, here it is, there's one, there's a triangle, there's one here. And guess where else he found it? Here. Now, that 180, we have one triangle on your hands. And we were dealing with that symbol of the Seal of Solomon and the Star of David. So that means we ultimately have 2 triangles. We got one pointing to heaven, we got one pointing to earth. We got one pointing as above, we got one pointing so below. We got a yin-yang, a positive and negative, a Shiva and Shakti, Adam and Eve, male and female coming together. And what's 180 plus 180? 360. And what's 360? Wholeness, the circle of life. The circle of life. So when we see 180 up, 180 down, we have that 360. We also find this in the symbol of pi. Does everybody see that? We have a circumference, we have a diameter, and we got 180 semicircle here, and 180 semicircle here. So that equals 360. So, if I have 180 here, and you have 180 there, and we grab hands with one another, what does that create? 360 degrees of the circle. It creates the holiness of ourselves. Now, what happens when 2 people join hands? Well, when 2 people join hands, it's showing affection, care, compassion, appreciation for one another. Or let's just call a damn spade a spade. What is it? It's called love. That's what it is, ladies and germs. It's called love. When 2 people join hands, we create the 360 degrees, the holiness of creation. And that is the love that you and I have for one another. Now, when we talked about oneness, wholeness, and we found that philosophically, irrefutably, innate, intrinsic within the philosophy of numbers itself. We found that wholeness, that oneness that connects everything. That oneness is not a pretty good idea. That oneness is not some new age woo-woo jargon. That oneness is not some hippy-dippy 1960s nonsense. That oneness is not the theme of your favorite reggae song or whatever. That oneness is a law. It's a law. The great creator being gave us these principles to help us understand that we are unified. Here's Albie Pike again. He said, humanity has never had but one religion and one worship. This universal light has had uncertain images, its deceitful reflections, and its shadows. But always after the nights of error, we see it reappear, one and pure like the sun. It's we could call it the perennial philosophy. It's the thing that keeps coming back. It's the thing that humanity forgets and that we have to come to understand again. And that is, it doesn't matter how many divisions we create in this universe, we are one. And the sooner we start acting in accordance with that, the sooner that intelligent force in creation is going to recognize it, and it's going to help us out. And as I said, the sooner we start recognizing that, the sooner we start living in concert with that, as soon as we start living in accord with that law, that creative force is going to reciprocate. It's going to see that, hey man, they're finally getting it. I'm going to help them out. That's the experience I've had, and that is what I wanted to share with you today. So that is going to do it for me. I really appreciate everybody. Thank you very much. And just one last thing. Do the math. That's it.
Running with the wolves and chasing the sun. Sometimes the moments can catch you undone. I see the great spirit in the birds that fly, in the whistle, the call, and the cry. In the whistle, the call, and the cry. Cold wind, lift me on your wings, fully satisfied in what our mother brings. My thirst is quenched by all the songs you sing, heaping tables fit for kings. Running with the wolves and chasing the sun. Sometimes the moments can catch you undone.